So, Amy,
Zachary.
Liz,
Hey,
do you guys know what raw milk is?
Yes.
I'm familiar with its work.
Have you guys been dabbling in raw milk?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I
Because I
think
don't want Eco Life.
I think I might be getting into raw milk.
Mm.
I think raw milk might fix me. I've been getting into it. I've been trying it. I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about raw milk.
Are you being serious?
Here's the deal. I think a lot of the problem with raw milk, wrong messenger, right? Wrong messenger for the raw milk. A lot of the bad guys, they love their raw milk, right? They love their raw milk. But I'm here to tell you that, once the vomiting stopped, right? Like the nutritional profile really took off, right? Like
Oh, did it?
they contain natural enzymes. Have you heard about the enzymes? Can I tell you about the enzymes?
Please do.
So the problem with the modern industrial milk state is that it takes out the natural enzymes, the fatty acids, the vitamins and minerals.
No, 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 no.
Do you want to
You're
know
not
what I
going to become
heard?
this podcast. No.
No, no,
No.
hear me out. Hear me out. Once the diarrhea stops,
Mm,
you get to really experience the taste. And I mean, like I have
mm.
been on the toilet for the last 7 days, but like since I left the toilet, having like purged my entire body, I'm able to like really like taste the full flavor of the milk. And like the libs don't want you enjoying that.
Cleanse.
They
It's a
don't.
cleanse now.
It's like that. I mean, they're preventing us from experiencing true flavor.
Truly. Those libs with their plant-based milk, they don't get it.
They don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get that. Like once the fever breaks, the euphoric sensation that comes with this traditional food preservative. I mean, like it lasts longer. It tastes better. Natural enzymes. It's like once the muscle aches that tore through my body, tore through my mortal frame like a thunderstorm. Once that dissipated, I suddenly I felt like good because I was supporting local agriculture.
Well,
I was, giving money to the guy down the street that has. He claims he claims that his cows are like out back. But I've never seen the cows, but like the like liquid that comes in the plastic gallons. I mean, it's kind of white looking.
I'm very curious about your journey with this, but
No, don't ask him any more
It's
questions.
a
I
health
think
journey.
I'm
It's
good.
it's about
It
what I'm
sounds
trying
like
to
a
say. What
cleanse.
sharks? Hear me out. Sharks,
Yeah,
sharks, hear me out. Hear me out, sharks. For 10% of my new raw milk company,
Mm.
for 10%, just 10% of my new raw milk company, you guys could get on the factory floor for Zach's superfood. Zach's raw milk.
Zach's
Yeah.
raw milk. I am very interested in milking a cow. That's something that's on my bucket list. And as an Iowan, I haven't been able to do this. But raw milk, you know what? I think I'm going to pass.
Welcome to Cornhole Champions, a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line, where we throw bags at the state's biggest stories. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. It's Wednesday, and today I'm joined by Starting Line's Amy Rivers and Liz Fleming. This week, we're unpacking Governor Reynolds' shocking decision not to seek re-election and how it reshapes Iowa's political landscape for 2026. We'll also examine how sudden federal funding cuts are creating a crisis for Iowa museums and libraries, with rural communities taking the hardest hit. Plus, conversations with Cedar Rapids' Angel Ramirez running to be the first Latina in the Iowa Legislature, Kevin Techau, the former U.S. Attorney, challenging Ashley Hinson for Congress. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. Liz, now that you've seen behind the great charade, is it?
No, I love this. I love this. I've been a long time listener, first time attendee of the pod. I love this. I feel like I'm getting a behind the scenes look at the magic.
We're glad to have you too. Yay.
Yay! I'm so glad to be here. Thank you again.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm joined today by Iowa Starting Line's epistolary queen, newsletter editor, Amy Rivers. Hello, Amy.
I still need to look up what epistolary means, but I will assume it's complimentary.
It's allegedly a complimentary, and a special guest for this week our normal host Avery Staker is out getting some well-earned PTO. In her place, maybe coming for the crown, Liz Fleming, a.k.a. Liz from Iowa, here among us as I live and breathe. Liz, hello.
What up? Thanks for having me.
What up? I'm glad you're here, Liz. What's happening in your neck of the woods?
In my neck of the woods, let's see. Sunshine.
The pursuit of happiness.
The pursuit of happiness and
We
good times. The vibes are pretty excellent.
I'm excited that porch season has finally reached its zenith. Right, we've got for me and mine, like the true sign of that spring has come. Is when the patios begin, they return from their winter homes. And there's a color that light beer turns in the sun on a patio that I live for. It's the only reason. It's the only thing that gets me through the winter. Do you guys have any?
Foam.
And the foam. Gotta come on.
We took him to Lua for our quarterly meeting, and he got a beer with like that much foam.
It was
that
absurd.
happened to me. Which one was it? The Pilsner?
This was it's called Gill's Pills. You can get it at in the tap room at Lua Brewing in Sherman Hills, Des Moines. It takes like an hour for them to pour it for like science reasons, art reasons. I'm not sure. I'm not certain. But it does hit. It does hit.
Oh, I've had a Gill's Pills before, and I knew when you mentioned the foam, I'm like, oh yeah, that looked like a root beer float type thing when I ordered it. But 'tis the season. Happy patio season.
Happy patio season. First story, Iowa's political landscape got a seismic shakeup. Governor Kim Reynolds' bombshell decision to step aside in 2026 means for the first time since 2010, 15 years ago, a political lifetime ago, Iowa Republicans will have their first wide open primary, and everybody wants their name to be in the running. For Democrats, it's a glimmer of hope after years in the wilderness. Incumbency is a superpower in an election, one that neither side will have going into this matchup. But hovering over it all is the shadow of Donald Trump. His endorsement has the power to change the game in an instant. As potential candidates from both sides begin circling, the question isn't just who's going to lead Iowa next, but how this surprise move will reshape every race on the ballot. The political dominoes have already begun falling. We're still nearly 2 years away from Election Day, and nonetheless, it seems there have been some shakeups. I wanted to start with talking about the Trump of it all. How do you guys have a sense of how the kind of will he, won't he endorsement of Donald Trump will impact this calculus?
The Register article is really interesting because you would assume it's Brenna Bird, right? I would assume it's Brenna Bird because Brenna Bird has been the one sucking up to him, right, the whole time. She even went to New York for his hush money trial just to stand there for a photo op. Like she's clearly gunning for a endorsement that you would assume is coming. But I wouldn't rule out, like they were talking about, Matt Whitaker, who he's appointed, and who's the other one? Kaufmann ran his Iowa caucus campaign. So both of those have pretty strong ties to Trump and could make a last minute case. And as we know, the last minute case is really the only thing that like matters for Trump. So I think it's kind of a little bit open question as to who he endorses, if he endorses at all.
Totally. Liz?
We will certainly see who he endorses and also if it really makes much of an impact. I don't know. Currently, I'm looking around and I'm seeing Trump being kind of a unstable figure at the top. We'll see if his endorsement really carries much weight by the time it's 2026. But I know everyone that's been mentioned is simping for the Trump endorsement, particularly Miss Brenna Bird.
Yeah, for me, it tells me just like how out of control the names of Iowa Republicans feel on the waters of their own base, right? Like they feel so unable to connect there. They've been so rocked by the Trump train that there's only one person in the party that in the Iowa Republican Party that has a say that matters in this race, and that's Donald Trump himself, the president of the United States, which is it's very different. Like once upon a time, right? In recent history, kingmakers like Terry Branstad, right, once had big hold. And we'll get to the candidate he seems to have endorsed going forward. But we're just in this really kind of strange time, I think, for the party in power. When you have Governor Kim Reynolds decide to step out of the running on top, I think what's interesting to me has been just the kind of musical chairs game that's taken place, right? You suddenly have people like the Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Naig, saying like, "Oh, I don't want to take my name out of the running." I think it's fascinating, right? That to watch these folks jockey for position.
They're all being quite coy too. They're like, I wouldn't not. I guess I'll talk to my family and see how they feel about it.
I mean, a lady never tells, I like to say.
Yeah, it opens it up totally. Everybody's that's been waiting since 2010 basically, right, is like, oh, time, 15 years of waiting. So a lot of pent up excitement for the open seat.
The phrase "I'm focused on serving Iowans and not running for higher office" has been repeated so many times. It might as well be our state's motto. I love it. I live for it.
And are they focused on helping Iowans?
Well, unlike the person they're looking to, I mean, farmers have come out, the farm industry folks have come out like in mass about how bad tariffs have been for farmers, how bad that's been for manufacturing. We're already seeing surcharges on goods. I mean, like it's the way that this is adding to some of our prices. Liz, I'm interested in your point on that, right? That will the Trump endorsement matter if Trump has ruined the economy? It's a great question. It's a great question, but like one that like is at his heels with these tariffs.
Right, and time will tell. I think if we've learned anything in the past couple years, politically, you don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how opinions will swing, but currently, right now, I'm taking a look around me and I'm looking at public feedback. Particularly in Iowa with the tariffs and just the state of the economy. And people are uncertain and people don't like to feel uncertain. So totally. I am the eternal optimist, always hoping for a switch up, a blue wave of sorts, but we will certainly see as 2026 comes closer.
It wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was only 2018 that we flipped 3 of 4 congressional seats to the Dems. Right. So I mean that was shocking to actually see, like, wow, that wasn't that long ago. Like, and it was exactly the same situation. I mean, in the midterms of Trump's first term. So I mean, it's very, very possible that Democrats' optimism it's
valid, I think.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm interested in the way that Governor Kim Reynolds' legacy is going to play into this election, right? We're seeing school vouchers reach their kind of fullest aperture, right? In terms of the, now the richest of the rich can have public money go to help fund their their kids' private school education. We've got a budget deficit, right? That's like our income tax cuts have so far created for us. I think there is some real concerns about the solvency of the state going forward, right? We'll have to see obviously a lot of this is in flux, but it's certainly something that I'm worried about. Do you guys think Reynolds will be a net benefit or a loss for Republicans running to be the next Reynolds?
I mean, you would think so, right? But I keep thinking that, like when the vouchers first passed, and there were a lot of rural folks against it, you're still seeing, them voting R. So I think one thing that has to happen is Democrats have to provide a viable alternative. So not just we're opposed to the school vouchers, but we're opposed to school vouchers and we're, going to lift up public education, something to give them a message. And I think that's what you're seeing them trying to do. When we were talking last podcast, you were talking to the possible contenders for a Joni Ernst seat.
Right.
They all had specific messages that they are not running on. They're not running as, Trump's terrible, Trump's bad, Reynolds is bad. They're running on specific messages in order to sort of boost that profile of them as not just like, oh, the dirty Democrats, I would never vote for them. Like, I don't like Republicans, but I'm going to hold my nose and do it. I think those days have to be, getting to be over, because now you're really seeing the fruits, the chickens come home to roost, as it were. So
totally,
we'll see if this is the one that does it.
I think it'll take a really good messaging campaign from the Dems to really pin a lot of the things that people don't like about the current state of Iowa on the Reynolds administration and tie it all together with the Republicans who are running. Much like we saw in 2024 with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, there was no space between what Kamala Harris wanted to do and what the Biden administration did. So lump them all together, make it seem like one big party that has caused all this destruction. And I think that would be a powerful message for Iowans. Because when it comes down to it, people will think, hey, am I better off now than I was when Kim Reynolds first took office or when Terry Branstad first took office? I think when you put it into perspective like that, people might be ready for a change.
There's only one statewide name that has said she will not be, in fact, running for governor. U.S. Representative Marionette Miller Meeks, who had two of the closest federal elections, at least in national history, but also obviously in the state history. Miller Meeks has said she is despite being deeply controversial in her own district, isn't going to try her hand at a wider run. But meanwhile, I wanted to hear, what do you guys make of? Obviously, we've talked about Attorney General Brenna Bird. This is a candidate that, at least for me, is infamous for trying to defund the Winneshiek Sheriff's Department. It was a great video that Iowa Starting Line put together on that. So you can read more at iowastartingline.com. What do you guys make of Brenna Bird?
When I think of Brenna Bird, I think of a few things. One, the bob haircut.
The bob, iconic.
It's very, I know. Usually a bob is iconic. This one, I have different feelings about this bob. Of course, the fiasco with going all the way to New York to simp for Donald Trump, support him in his time of need, I guess. But mostly what I think of is when she halted payments for emergency contraceptives for sexual assault victims in Iowa. That is something that was within her scope of control, and she let a lot of Iowans down in that way. So that's what comes to mind for me when I think of Brenna Bird. Very serious consequences for a very unserious leader.
Maybe.
And then just all the political things that she was a part of as Attorney General and still continues to be, that she continues to get hammered for. I think one of the big ones was like the Section 504 thing, where it would have taken away, services for disabled Americans that, that she said, well, we only wanted to take away services for transgender Americans, but of course, this is what happens when you go after one group, as other groups get swept up in it. And then pretty soon, people are like, oh, she's coming for all of us, it turns out.
Totally. We've got a couple here, so we'll kind of rattle through them. House Speaker Pat Grassley is also on this list. Obviously, a huge leader in the Iowa Legislature. He is kind of the voice of the House of Representatives for the state. It's kind of seen as there was a Des Moines Register, pretty glowing Des Moines Register profile of his work during the session, right? And how they, kind of how he's this quiet but benevolent kind of leader of his caucus. I mean, he has ridden because Republicans have a supermajority in that chamber, they have the ability to kind of do what they want. And yet he's still somehow able to keep control of a raucous House. He's given subcommittees to everything from there was the criminalized people administering mRNA vaccines. There was the geoengineering bill. This was the chemtrail bill. So I mean, he's unfortunately for his legacy, has allowed for pretty bonkers, pretty banana pants ideas to hit the kind of the chambers of our legislature. What do y'all know about Grassley?
He's just waiting on
He's
a seat to become open in the Senate, right?
I'm sure he is tired of folks waiting to see if calling him, asking him if can you just say something to your grandfather? Can you just ask him to give you the nod?
Guys, are you interested in this?
Yeah. Wild.
Also in the House, Representative Bobby Kaufmann, based out of Wilton, Iowa, my neck of the woods. He's a kind of a firebrand type. He's the suck it up, sweetheart. Or do you remember this? Anyway, I gave two middle fingers to the woke mob. He very big personality. Doesn't always think about what word salad's coming out of his mouth. But he is the son of Jeff Kaufmann, chair of the GOP, right? So Nepo's gonna Nepo.
Another Nepo, baby.
So of course, he wanted to have his name thrown in for good measure.
It's funny. I looked him up because I had never heard Bobby Kaufmann actually speak. So I looked up on YouTube Bobby Kaufmann. First thing that came up, the thumbnail was him with his two middle fingers up. I'm like, what a guy. What a guy. Yeah, I
He's
think Trump would like him.
It's funny. So when I was at the Iowa City Press Citizen, Bobby Kaufmann would regularly come in. The Press Citizen, for what it's worth, hears out all candidates, but just was not giving the editorial board, which had been there. All the members had been there longer than anybody that like actually worked for the newspaper while I was there, which is to much to their chagrin. Bobby Kaufmann would come in for candidate interviews, right? Which I think is great, right? The Press Citizen not known for endorsing Republicans, but he would show up anyway. And it's super interesting to like juxtapose Bobby Kaufmann ahead of a primary. He likes to play moderate. He's good government. He's willing to hear people out. He's and then you got the middle finger Bobby Kaufmann being assaulted by the woke mob. It's remarkable, kind of his the like victimhood of him and his father, right? And their ability to kind of make it all about them. So once again, of course, right, you got to give the nod to the Kaufmann name, right, that they're in the running for this seat. The next person is Senator Mike Bousselot. Senator Mike Bousselot is the guy who hit headlines recently with he wanted to buy the counties, the lower counties of Minnesota.
Oh.
You remember this story?
Yeah.
It kind of looks
Make
like
Iowa larger again.
make Iowa big again. Mike Bousselot, despite looking like handsome Squidward, he has managed to like carve out a kind of a space for himself as being someone who's willing to go to bat for some pretty controversial bills within the caucus.
My whole thing is like, no one's asking for these things. Like, no one's asking to expand Iowa by 9 counties.
We'll just move on.
Handsome Squidward.
Handsome Squidward. What is kind of interesting about Mike Bousselot is that he, in his release saying that he's forming a gubernatorial exploration committee, which the only candidate to have done so thus far, he had mentioned that he included a quote from former Iowa Governor Terry Branstad, who is a titan, or for a time there was before Trump's takeover of the party, was considered like a kingmaker within Republican politics. He's most recently been the CEO of the World Food Prize, kind of getting out of politics, but he still obviously wants to keep a finger in the pie of Iowa politics, and so it appears at least that he's been in serious talks with Mike Bousselot about a endorsement should he decide to throw his hat in.
Does a Terry Branstad endorsement do anything for you?
I mean, if it's not Trump, it doesn't matter, right? Like if Trump endorsed Bobby Kaufmann, if Trump endorsed Brenna Bird, like who cares?
Terry Branstad did such a great job as ambassador to China. Look at us now. Great relations.
Look at us now. Now we're in a trade war with China. China's probably going to start buying even more soy from our neighbors down south, and Iowa farmers are going to be left with fewer markets to pick from. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. Next is our U.S. representatives who have expressed some interest. The one news item that has come up has been Zach Nunn. Someone in Zach Nunn's office telling the publication Notice that, well, I mean, he's taking a serious look at it, isn't he? So potentially some exciting stuff there.
I saw an interview with him saying that he has 6 kiddos back home, so it'd be nice for him to be closer to home as governor of Iowa. I disagree. I'd like him to not be here anymore.
I mean, making it
the kiddos in the room with us,
making this even harder. I think Zach Nunn, like Miller Meeks, faces those two face two of the hardest races in 2026. You're going to have a really well-funded, coordinated campaign among Democrats, and while the governor's seat, even with out an incumbent running, the governor's seat is like still a pretty tall order. Those two seats are likely to be in play in 2026. Miller Meeks reported raising $1 million since the beginning of the year in the last quarter. I haven't checked Zach Nunn's fundraising, but the two of them certainly have a battle if they choose to run for either of these seats.
Yeah, it would be very interesting because then you're going to see a reshuffle. So if you see like in Zach Nunn jump in, who's going to jump in on the Republican side? There'll be then an unknown. So then you've got another situation where you have no incumbency. So, I mean, the dominoes could easily fall like that.
in some ways it emboldens the power of a Trump endorsement, right? That if someone while in this early exploratory moment, right? If Trump throws an endorsement on one, the potential shakedown, right, is I think massive. And then, of course, we've been talking about Republicans. In terms of Democrats running, you'll notice that it's been pretty quiet. And while virtually every other publication doesn't seem to want to do so, let's go ahead and go on record and say that Rob Sand's running. He won't announce yet. He hasn't announced yet. But he raised he raised over $7 million. The guy has been doing his 99 county tour since he became state auditor. I mean, obviously I don't have any insider information on this, but like it's very clear from anybody looking in that this guy is running for office. Whether anybody else will join him, whether it'll be like some other people that decide to primary him, who knows? But good luck with the war chest that he's built up. Just we're 2 years out. It's incredible.
Well, and he was doing this, though, 4 years ago, too. He was also doing a tour. He was also raising money. He was also the front runner in many speculation, and then ultimately decided not to.
That's fair.
Run. And I think that this is different because Reynolds is out. I think that then you do see an opening for Rob Sand. So I don't think you're wrong. But I will point out that he was doing the same things 4 years ago.
I hear you, and he may decide that he wants to give it some more time. He may decide that he just wants to keep his nose to the till. That is totally possible. But like there's a lot of the culture of purity around reporters always drives me crazy. And like moments like these, I just roll my eyes when I hear like, oh well, no Democrat
really running.
No Democrat has announced Rob Sand maybe
seriously raised $7 million.
It would be super interesting for there to be a matchup between Rob Sand and Mike Bousselot. I was just thinking because Mike Bousselot was the one who led the bill, who led the bill to limit the auditor's power. Right? It was the state auditor is, for those who don't know, is the statewide elected office charged with kind of investigating, auditing state government to make sure there's no financial malfeasance. And now, as a part of the governor kind of consolidating power into her office, now there's if a executive branch office, say the Health and Human Services, decides that actually we aren't going to give you X document, the way it works out is they create a panel instead of going to a judge, right? Instead of going to a court, they go to a 3-person panel: one who's named by the auditor, one who's named by the governor, and one who's named by the office being investigated. So 2 executive branch representatives and the state auditor. It's like who wins that? Anyway, so that could be a fun matchup. Any other matchups y'all be interested in?
I think Rob Sand has a really excellent case against anybody at this point. From being the underdog, from being the only statewide elected Democrat, he's got plenty of material to go off of to make a case for himself and make a case against whoever he's running against.
I think from my vantage point, I'll be really interested in just because he has so much money going into 2026, it becomes like a really exciting year to run for Democrats, right? Because those coattails will be long, right? The impact that that's going to have on congressional races, the impact that that's going to have on state legislative races. For folks, if in some ways, right, I think for folks that are on the fence about whether or not to run in a Des Moines suburb seat, right, to run in maybe a purplish area, right, I think suddenly the money case becomes, well, I might have the support this in 2026. I might have the support that a different year wouldn't, right? So potentially really exciting, but we'll see again, right? Like you all said the safe thing. Who knows if he's running? But listener, just right here, come a little closer.
They'll clip us.
Like, grow up.
Clip us and be like,
grow up.
You were wrong.
He's right. Yeah, I'll eat crow. I will eat crow on air, alive, if he decides not to run. But come on,
clip that.
Come on. Second story, they've survived floods, tornadoes, and a pandemic. But now Iowa museums and libraries face their greatest threat yet, a federal funding guillotine. Turns out the only disaster they can't survive is a presidential pen stroke. What started as an executive order from President Trump and Elon Musk's Doge has cascaded into cultural emergencies across the state. Federal funds that took decades to build up, lifelines for everything from historical archives to children's reading programs, disappeared overnight. The Des Moines Register reported that the National Mississippi River Museum in Dubuque, the Science Center in Des Moines, local libraries and rural communities all are scrambling to find replacement funding for programs already in progress. As museum directors and librarians frantically reach out to elected officials and search for alternative funding, the stakes couldn't be higher. I wanted to this was a super interesting story by the Des Moines Register, by their watchdog columnist Lee Rude. She kind of goes into the sprawling impacts that this will have on these institutions. The impacts of which disproportionately impact rural museums, rural towns that will lose real funding here. What do you guys make of this story?
It's just add it to the pile basically of what's been happening. But I mean, it is important in its own right when you sort of are losing these funds, and they're losing funds for future programming. They're losing funds for planning long term. Mm-hmm. They're also sometimes losing funds that they've already appropriated. We're seeing that now they have to scramble to figure out. So ultimately what's either going to happen is they have to milk that back from their communities. In a lot of cases, not knowing whether they can, because these are large amounts sometimes, or close or stop certain programming, reduce their hours. So this is really going to affect an entire new generation. I mean, who doesn't remember going to their local museum as a kid, and learning about your town's history, or, going there on the weekend with your family, and the National Mississippi River Museum in Dubuque is fantastic. It's got so many animals and exhibits and things like that. And just to see something like that disappear is it's horrifying.
As a Dubuque girly, born and raised, I remember when the River Museum first came to town, and it's just been expanding and getting better and better. And I think of the people who probably haven't made the connection between funding cuts and their ability to take their children to the River Museum. I know I have sisters, I have cousins, people in the community who bring their kids there because it's something to do year round in the winter. And it's something that's interesting and engaging and educational for the kids. It's when you take those things away, where are families supposed to go? What are people supposed to do? And what is the tourism attraction then in Dubuque? It's just, it hits so many different areas of our community and our state.
I think about the Iowa Public Library and the children's reading hours that are just overflowing with families that come out to this, right? I think about, that's in Iowa City, right, which has a pretty large endowment, right, is unlikely to be hit nearly as hard as some of your rural libraries, right, that already have limited hours. Rural libraries that not only have less funding coming from the federal government, but from tax cuts that the state made. The state has prevented, once upon a time in the state, local a municipality, a county could decide that we want to add a levy rate to our taxes. We want to increase our taxes so that it can fund our local library, our local museum. The state has taken away municipalities' abilities to do that. Local governments no longer can kind of try to fund their libraries and museums in that way. So this is just another shock to institutions that are already experiencing pretty large crunch on that end.
And it begs the question, what's the end goal? What does this look like when there are no places like that to go or opportunities to engage?
Right. Or they become places that only the rich can access. These are private institutions. You have to pay exorbitant amounts to get in.
If the goal, right, is to bore kids to death, if the goal right now is to prevent families from, having fun things to go do on the weekends, if the goal is for the summer camp programs that these institutions provide to their community, if that was the goal, boy, howdy, do we got a great time ahead. But right now, these institutions are floundering, right? Here we are as a state with legislature's in the middle of their session, right? They had, if they wanted to, they could create an appropriations bill that could better fund our school, our libraries, our museums. They could extend the tax levy authority for local governments. But will that happen? I'm betting not. For our cornhole matchup this week, the Iowa legislative session is still underway, but the Democratic minority has an empty seat. State Representative Sammy Sheets of Cedar Rapids resigned from his post after being appointed to join the Linn County Board of Supervisors. And so we've got a special election. Iowa House District 78 has a special election coming up on April 29th. When this episode drops, that's less than a week from now. Early voting has already begun. We spoke to a 25-year-old that's making the case that Democrats need a fighter in the House, and she's the one to do it. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. Joining me now is a young candidate, Angel Ramirez, who wants to be the first Latina to serve in the Iowa Legislature. Hello, Angel.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit because, that seat has actually had kind of a run of young candidates on it, right? And the first thing about your bio that kind of stood out to me was you're all of 25 years old. And as a 31-year-old, I associate Iowa politics with very old politicians. Angel, can you walk me through why the kind of case you're making for a young person representing the seat?
Yes. In this moment, with a federal administration that is gung-ho on stripping civil rights and a state government that's enabling that behavior and making it worse for Iowans, we need to meet this moment with bold, progressive vision for what Iowa could be. People are ready for something different. People are ready for a fresh perspective, and people who are unapologetic in progressive values that we can really bolster our social programs here and help everyday Iowans. And I am that candidate. I've worked the last 7 years since I moved out to Iowa to attend Coe College as a first-generation student, now graduate with 2 degrees. Very proud to say so. I have spent the last 7 years building community here in Linn County, in my district, in Cedar Rapids. And it's all come out to play now, where we have people from all corners of the community really throwing their support behind my campaign, which represents bold, progressive, human-centered vision for Iowa.
Before we get to kind of what's in that platform, I'm always interested in what brings folks to a party, right? We're at a time where, I, as a member of the media, I mean, as bad as media is thought of by the general public, parties aren't thought of any better, right? And I'm interested. I can understand why you might not want to run on the Republican ticket, but tell me why you deigned to run on the Democratic ticket. What was it about this party and this time that you wanted to be a part of?
That's a really good question, and I have to be honest. When I first turned 18, I registered as an independent. I was socially liberal, as I identified as socially liberal, but I didn't feel like either party really represented my views. That shifted when I moved out here and I got to meet some of the really strong community members who showed up in spaces that I really cared about surrounding social justice, marginalized communities, public education. And they also happened to be people who were active within the Democratic Party. And I saw a vision that a lot of people held within my community for what the Democrats can be and what the Democrats can do with people who are willing to take that leadership position. So, I felt like I can be one of those people that can represent a new stage in the Democratic Party as we respond to this really critical moment in American history.
And it is a really important moment right now in the state of Iowa. Just taking the state of Iowa, our economy is contracting. We have our school districts are seeing less and less dollars, and we'll talk about schools in a little bit. How are you thinking about the needs of the working families in your district?
At the bottom line, living and working in Iowa should be affordable. It should be accessible, and unfortunately, right now, it's not. It includes looking at things like healthcare, right? Increasing access to affordable and quality healthcare for Iowans. It's protecting workers, it's supporting unions and collective bargaining rights. So things like wages and salary and healthcare and benefits are all in play for how we can better support our working families. And it's also things like raising minimum wage to be livable. I mean, it's really incomprehensible that we are still having a minimum wage that you can't even afford to pay for a meal at a fast food restaurant with
Totally.
your hours of work, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it was they've even taken away the ability for local governments to raise that.
Exactly. As we know, local governments have a tap on what their communities need and what their constituents need. It's all cyclical and it's all interconnected. And that's why we need intentional leadership that also is well connected with the struggles of what it's like to live in Iowa right now. As I'm out knocking doors over the last few years, as I've really created community in different spaces with my geographic area, every person that I talk to is struggling with some kind of financial hardship, right? For me, that looks like student debt. I had scholarships, but I am still struggling with student debt. I pay almost $1,000 a month in student debt. How can I afford to buy a house with that kind of debt, right? That's something that I personally struggle with. And that's another aspect. How do we make education affordable? And how do we lead, our graduating high school seniors into spaces where they can get an education and then get jobs here in Iowa? It's really all interconnected. And the sad part is every community member is struggling with some aspect of financial hardship. And that to me shows a failure in the government that needs to be protecting and uplifting their residents.
One of the when I came to the state, I was 24 years old. Still had student loan, still was paying off my student loans. There is a light at the end of that tunnel for those listening. I promise that it can happen. It can happen eventually. But I remember I came to Iowa. I came from Mississippi to Iowa, and I was just throwing so much money at those loans. And I remember someone asking me like, "So why'd you move to Iowa?" Right? I'd followed a girl. It worked out, and they'd ask me like, "Why didn't you move to like a Boston? Why didn't you move to a Houston area where the income level is going to be a little bit higher? Your chances of making a little bit of a higher living is going to be higher. The rate that you're paying, it certainly doesn't take into concert kind of what your earning potential is in the market that you're in. Why not go somewhere else, right? And it for me, it really underscored how debt can shape opportunity. It can shape what states get to win and ultimately lose from brain drain, right? You got your education here. My hope would be that, maybe those 4 years got you more invested in this place. Maybe that got you wanting to work a job in this place. What is in thinking about? I'm interested in this because you are you mentioned your own student debt, but this is a challenge facing a lot of Iowans trying to decide whether or not they're going to stick around.
We're seeing talented young people leave Iowa. We're seeing people who are nearing retirement leave Iowa, right? People who are trying to start families leave Iowa. And it's all because our government is not instilling the things that it should be in order to keep people here. For me, I stayed in Iowa because I found a community here that I really cared about, right? But that came with others investing in me and opening up doors for me. It's part of the reason why I started a paid fellowship program to keep emerging leaders in public service here in Iowa so that they had a pathway of opportunity to be able to stay here and invest their time here. So
tell me a little bit about that. I would love to hear more about that. What is this fellowship program?
So it's called Our Future. It's only a few years old. Me and a close friend of mine who is a climate activist started this organization, this nonprofit 501c3, in order to keep young people here because we saw the gaps. We saw how difficult it was to be able to balance things like school or a full-time job, or some of our fellows have families that they take care of, right? All of these things, and learn how to help their community in really impactful ways and potentially make careers out of that. So helping professions, service professions, And so the paid fellowship program does that. We pay $21.24 an hour. We pay for them to take professional development trainings like how to grant write, how to fundraise, how to overcome imposter syndrome, right? Really critical things in navigating spaces that may be unfamiliar to you. And the idea is that we can hopefully be the pathway to keep young people or emerging leaders here in our communities and invest socially, professionally, their time and energy in really impactful ways. And the cool thing is the fellows also get to make a project of their own design. We fully fund a project of their own design that works to alleviate an inequity that can be measured within our county. So it's only a few years old, but it's growing so fast. And we have had 100% success rate in fellows having stayed in Iowa after they graduated the fellowship program because those opportunities are there. And yeah, as you could tell, that's something I'm really passionate about. And our government can play a role in opening up opportunities for people. And that's the beauty of what government can do, of what policy can do. But we need leaders in those positions that care enough to make those opportunities happen.
Places make cases for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, if you are being told, if you were living in a place that is telling you that it doesn't want you, that it is not
Right.
valuing your labor, that it's not going to create opportunity for you to buy a home, right? When you're looking for childcare and it's not got it for you, right? There's I don't think everybody keeps like a spreadsheet on all the yeses and nos and that they pass by on their life, right? But like I do think that that's something that over time it's this snowball that drives a decision to leave a place, drives a decision to make a go of a place, right? It sounds like you've had a really similar experience to me in that I have a community that has just raised me up in the biggest way in Iowa, right? It's something that I'm really proud of. It's something that keeps me in this place. And speak a little bit to your experience in that capacity, right? Because I feel like that when thinking specifically about a young person that might be listening, right? It's not easy, right, to find yourself in that place, right? There's a lot of work I think that comes in trying to like build that around yourself, build that kind of rooting, and I wonder like what you have to say to that person and that might be struggling with whether or not to leave, whether or not to stay in Iowa, given all the reasons, and there are many for why folks might choose to leave, right? Not to, because I don't want to undersell that, but what do you say to those folks?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I mean, I'd start with my own experience. I mentioned that I was a first generation college student. I came from Arizona. I had never lived in Iowa before, didn't know a soul moving here. And frankly, I didn't really know what college would be like. I felt really lucky that I had an advisor that talked to me about these things and broke down some of those barriers, because I think that's kind of the first step, is identifying some of those barriers that you might be facing and then allies in those spaces that could help break those barriers down. One thing that I would offer potentially is the obstacles that are here are very real, and people are valid in feeling like they don't know if they want to stay. I want to like validate those feelings. You know, my partner is a Black man, and having to navigate some of these spaces is uncomfortable and scary. I mean, there's like very real threats to a lot of those civil rights that we should be implementing. And at the same time, we've decided to stay because we felt like we can make a difference here in this space. And I think that's just what I would encourage people is when you find allies, talk to them candidly about those obstacles that you face, because the more people that are talking about the problems, the more people that are offering solutions. Carve out space for yourself. I mean, kick down those doors, right? Like, how can you maximize your power, your voice, in order to make this fight really collective? And we have power in numbers, so the more people that stay here and fight, the more likely that we could come out with rights protected, with people protected, and our communities thriving.
Zooming out a little bit, I wanted to talk a bit about education. One of the kind of recent policy decisions that you've critiqued has been the private school voucher program that at this point has an unlimited appropriation from the budget. It'd be nice. I'm sure public schools would also love an unlimited appropriation. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. You're kind of saying like, look for the helpers, right? Like look for folks in your community that can help you, that you can advocate for and can advocate on your behalf, right? I wonder how you're thinking about that's a big trying to take on getting our schools funded adequately. That is a huge project, right? Tell me about like how that thesis on the local also or maybe it doesn't push back if it doesn't, but how does that play on a statewide basis? How does it play for like something as big as that?
When it comes to public education, I work in a middle school right now as a community partner through Kids First Law Center. And my students that I work with are kids who are often coming from single parent households, parents who are incarcerated, parents who are working more than one job to just put food on the table, right? There's a lot of external factors that I think highlights exactly what you're just now mentioning. It needs to be a multifaceted approach where you're talking about housing, you're talking about protecting workers, you're talking about increasing minimum wage, because all of those things that happen in a household impact a child. We have seen the attack on public education from this Republican-led legislature and governor, and it's been gutting our classrooms. It's been taking away good teachers. It's been removing critical resources to our kids that impacts every student, regardless of what resources an individual kid needs. It impacts the entire climate and culture. And at one point, Iowa was one of the leading states in public education. And that's one route that I want to go as I'm talking to different community members across Iowa, including in conservative areas, of bringing it back to how public education is really the foundation of class. It's the foundation of lifting people out of poverty. It's the foundation of getting a good job, right? These are things that everybody wants for their kids. Everybody wants their kids to grow up and get a good job and be able to afford to have a family if that's what they so choose, right? Everyone wants their kids to be able to afford a house one day, go on vacation, right? These are things that like we want our families to have. And one challenge that I'm actually looking forward to is being able to get back to those basics. But I do think that there are some shared values there. And the good thing is all of the public schools are on the same page. They want funding and they want to be able to take care of their kids and their educators. And beyond that, I think that we need to, protect educators' rights to be teaching accurate and inclusive curriculum that they decide that is evidence-based and research-based and not decided by legislators who have no experience in education. So
What a radical policy. Are you? Whoa.
I know, who would think that it needs to be evidence-based things that we are teaching our kids, right?
I'll have to do some. I'll have to look at the evidence on that.
Oh, please. No, but seriously, like it's that's how we also keep good educators, right? Is letting them teach things that they know are best for kids to learn.
Right.
So
Angel Ramirez is a Iowa House candidate running in the special election for District 78. That is a special election coming up on April 29th. Early voting has already begun, so if you are within that district, be sure to vote this before the 29th. Angel, is there anything you want to plug while you're on the show?
Just that if you're interested in volunteering and being part of this campaign for what Iowa can be, not just what we're fighting against, feel free to reach out to me or my campaign team. My Facebook page is Ramirez for Iowa. Website is ramirezforiowa.com. We would love to have you join, our fight for that change.
So that's ramirezforiowa.com, ramirezforiowa.com. Making me really struggle to spell today. Angel, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Zach,
Amy, Liz.
What'd y'all make of Angel Ramirez?
I was just going to say how refreshing it is to hear about young people in the state and someone who wants to actually address keeping young people in the state. As someone who's formerly young, I am 30 now, I watched all my friends leave Iowa. And back in the day, like, yeah, maybe people went away for college or to work for a while, but they came back. People are not coming back because there's nothing to come back for. It used to be, we got the best public schools in the nation. It was a great place to raise your kids. That's not the case anymore. So what is the case for people staying in Iowa or returning to Iowa? I'm happy to see somebody talk about that.
And she's talking about the very thing that you're mentioning is the public education piece of it. And I think that truly is a winning issue this year. I would hope. I mean, people are noticing it now. It's really obvious that their schools are being sort of deprived of resources. And so I think that really is because honestly, we did. Our parents came back here or never left because they believed that they wanted to raise their kids in a place where they could get a really good education. And that's gone. And that could come back. I mean, it just is a matter of policy and putting the right people in that want the right policies. And so I think that she's right to be running on that.
Last, I wanted to feature a short conversation with Kevin Techau. Last week, Techau announced he's challenging Republican incumbent Ashley Hinson for Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. For those trying to keep track, that's Iowa's northeastern congressional district. Kevin's not exactly new to public service. He's a 6th-generation Iowan who's worn multiple hats: U.S. Attorney for Northern Iowa, Iowa's Commissioner for Public Safety under Governor Vilsack, and a military man with nearly 3 decades of service between his active duty Air Force and the Iowa National Guard. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. You're listening to Cornhole Champions. I'm your host, Zachary Oren Smith. I'm sitting here with Kevin Techau, who just announced he's challenging Republican incumbent Ashley Hinson for Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. Kevin, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Nice to meet you and glad to talk to your audience.
Glad to have you here. So for your career spans military service, law enforcement, legal work. How do you think these experiences prepared you for the 2nd District in Congress?
Well, if you look at the positions I was proud to serve in, protecting Iowa's safety is really the through line. So I was glad to do that through my military service, give back to the country and help keep Iowans safe. And also as Commissioner of Public Safety, as you mentioned, and U.S. Attorney, all those positions, really the primary responsibility is public safety. And so that's been an important part of my life and my career and something I take very seriously.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me. I don't think we've had a attorney be the person kind of to go up against Ashley Hinson. We've seen a couple of Democrats try their hand in the district, but each time, she's an excellent communicator and someone who has like a very forceful personality that she's used to win a number of races at this point. In your mind, kind of what do you think sets you apart from candidates gone by? What makes you different?
Well, I think you have to, as you mentioned, my career in the military and public safety. If you look at Ashley Hinson, I mean, I think she's turned her back on Iowans. She campaigned on lowering prices in the economy, and that's just not happening. And so I have a commitment to Iowans. I'm going to look out for them in the public safety, but also really work hard on economic issues, the meat and potatoes. Iowans I talk to are concerned about making ends meet. And what's going to happen next. So these tariffs are really hurting Iowans. As I understand it, Ashley Hinson supports them, and so I think that's a bad decision for Iowans.
Yeah, I think she has said that she wants to have some conversations with the Trump administration about how these get implemented. But as an overarching policy for the Trump administration, I mean, she believes that some version of tariffs are an important piece here. Are tariffs not something that you support?
I just think that tariffs, as they're stacking up now, are creating so much uncertainty and chaos that we need to know where this is going to lead. So, and it's day to day. And so when I talk to Iowans, they're just really concerned if they're going to be able to weather this storm. So as people plan for their business, plan for their crops, they need some certainty, and we just don't have it right now. And really the campaign really centered on those economic issues to bring prices down and fight inflation. So right now, it appears the tariffs are hurting more than helping. I guess time will tell on that.
In addition to the impact tariffs are having on what could be another recession, infrastructure has been a contentious issue, particularly in Iowa's 2nd congressional district. Ashley Hinson voted against the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, despite campaigning on some of the infrastructure that benefited from that fund. What would your approach be to securing infrastructure funding for northeastern Iowa?
Well, if you take a step back, I think infrastructure is a critical part of our economy. So any infrastructure that's going to help reward Iowans with better jobs, bring jobs to Iowa, transportation is certainly an important part of that. And so I think that those are legitimate issues that the government should benefit Iowans. So, you got to look at it one by one, but infrastructure is a critical part of our economy. And so it needs to be strong so Iowa can have good paying jobs.
It didn't take long for your campaign to be announced before I saw a press release from Ashley Hinson's campaign calling you a radical leftist, part of the someone who will empower the AOC squad. Do you want to tell me kind of about your kind of how you think kind of address how you would address kind of that kind of jab?
Well, I think if you just take a look at my career, I mean, I was proud to take the oath in the Air Force to protect the country, National Guard. Commissioner of Public Safety, U.S. Attorney, all those positions, you take an oath to protect the country and public safety. So I'm proud of that record. I was proud to serve with law enforcement members across Iowa, as well as some really good attorneys in the U.S. Attorney's Office, where we took on business corruption, immigration crime, healthcare fraud, gun trafficking, and gun violence and drug trafficking. So, I mean, I stand by my record. I'm proud of it. I was proud to serve in those positions, and think it gives me a good base to serve the people of Iowa.
Was that the radical leftist military that you enlisted with?
Well, I'm proud of my service. It was an honor to serve in the United States Air Force, and then continued in the Iowa Air National Guard, served in Sioux City, and then the 132nd in Des Moines, and then Camp Dodge. So it was a great experience, and I'm proud of my service.
You've spent much of your career in appointed positions rather than elected ones. What motivated you to run for Congress now, and how would you describe your political philosophy to voters who may not be familiar with you as you're stepping into this kind of elected juncture?
Sure. I mean, I would really want to focus in on the economic issues. I mean, when I talk to people, they're wondering, like I mentioned, paycheck to paycheck, how they're going to make ends meet. Ashley Hinson is lined up with Elon Musk. It's a relentless pursuit against the middle class. I hear that, billionaires and corporations are scamming the system so the rich get richer and everyday Iowans are struggling. So that's where I want to have my focus. I mean, we need to bring back good paying jobs to Iowa, drive down costs, and certainly public safety is an important underline for all that. So
tariffs, reducing, maybe going after tariffs, doing some kind of continuing to invest in infrastructure. Those are key pieces. I mean, are there some other ideas that you're kind of interested, policy ideas that you think would make a difference for Iowa pocketbooks?
Well, healthcare costs are something that I hear a lot about, and especially in this district, which includes a lot of rural components, and having strong rural hospitals is certainly important. That's a foundation of any economy. So that's something else that I want to pay attention to make sure Iowans have access to good quality healthcare, and that includes strong rural hospitals throughout the 2nd district.
Kevin Techau, thanks for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks for letting me talk to you, and nice to meet you, and look forward to talking more.
Zach,
Amy,
Liz,
what do you guys think of Kevin Techau?
no nonsense.
yeah, I mean, he's talking about the economic issues, I think on those points that really resonates. Obviously, people are pissed about the tariffs, and they're going to continue to be pissed the longer these things go on. And I think the point about the rural hospitals is a huge one, especially in Northeast Iowa. If you're outside of a metro area, you really have to drive to get good health care, and it didn't always used to be that way.
I would say he seemed very no nonsense, straight and to the point, and I'm interested to see how the district perceives him and supports him. That's my neck of the woods, Northeast Iowa, and we've had a few candidates go against Ashley Hinson, unfortunately unsuccessfully. So I'm interested to see how this goes for Kevin or anybody else who throws their hat in the ring.
Yeah, and it's still early days. Obviously, Kevin didn't have a ton for us in this interview, but I hope as his campaign develops, right, we kind of move out of that kind of generic Democratic territory and into something like kind of a more sense of like what is his case for how this district should be won by a Democrat. Before we get off the call, Liz, do you want to plug anything?
Yes, absolutely. So find me anywhere online at Liz from Iowa. I also have lizfromiowa.com if you'd like to get in contact with me. Otherwise, this Saturday is Indie Bookstore Day, and I will be speaking at Storyhouse Book Pub for a banned book extravaganza. So join us Saturday, April 26th, 6 to 8 at Storyhouse Book Pub in the East Village in Des Moines, and I'd love to see you there.
That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop Wednesday mornings. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This podcast is created by me with music from Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith.
I'm Amy Rivers.
I'm Liz Fleming.
Thanks for listening.